Dessalines, they were not onto that kind of course at all. They were completely against it. It was anathema to Dessalines. But although he was elevated to the position, Dessalines became the commander-in-chief. He reaffirmed his loyalty, and he said he would be loyal. Naturally, he was loyal to Toussaint. He was very sad about this thing, but he wouldn't join. He wouldn't join with him. And that was the period that Toussaint got in trouble. Boudet and the others sent a message to him to come and meet them at the headquarters to discuss. Toussaint took a couple of soldiers with him, jumped on his horse, and went. And by the way, this act of treachery was engineered by, you know who? A Catholic priest. Let that be a lesson. And he went. When he got into the general's headquarters, he went to the entrance. They made him stand in the lobby, the entrance of the French general's headquarters, waiting for Leclerc and the others to come out. And half an hour he's standing there. Nobody turned up. After a while, after that half hour, a group of French soldiers rushed in with chains, chained his hands to his back, chained him, and took him aboard a ship that was waiting for him, the Creole, and took him to France. And that had happened to Toussaint. Dessalines, I don't have to tell you what he said. Dessalines, and Pétion was there too. Alexandre Pétion, who was a mulatto. Christophe was there. Pétion was the first to remark, to say, I cannot understand General Toussaint. He, a former slave. My father is a white man, is a Frenchman, and I do not trust him. He doesn't like me because I have African blood in me. I wouldn't go. Christophe said he would go, but he would take 2,000 of his crack men with him. And he would go, and if in 10 minutes he didn't come out, I have orders to kill everybody and burn the place down. These men were Africans. Toussaint was not an African. This, again, as I say, is the lesson that we have to learn all the time. Actually, Pétion's actual words, when he was shaking his head near Dessalines when that was happening, he said, but how could General Toussaint count upon the sincerity of the whites? He, their former slave. When I not even have the friendship of my own father, whom I do not trust, for the simple reason that I have African blood in my veins. He could say that. But Toussaint, when he left to die in 1802 in the fortress in Jouet, he said, one of the things he said, too late, but he said, in overthrowing me, they have felled in Saint-Dominique only the trunk of the tree of Negro liberty. He couldn't even say African liberty. It will shoot up from the roots because they are deep and numerous. It did shoot up. But as I said, it was too late for Toussaint. The removal of Toussaint did not mean the end of the revolution. On the contrary, it gave the revolutionaries, especially Dessalines and Christophe, greater force to fight and to die for the liberty. Dessalines said, he said, we have in common, what have we got in common with those bloody-minded people? He's talking about the French. Their cruelties compared to our moderation, their color to ours, the extension of the seas which separate us, our avenging climate, all plainly tell us that they are not our brethren and that they will never become us. He was clear about that. And he even went on to say, one of the things that, for he said, one historian, they called Dessalines a brute, a murderer, a tyrant, a savage, and a beast, everything. But what about Rochambeau? Rochambeau committed the most atrocious crimes. Rochambeau picked out pregnant African women and had the most atrocious things happen to them, the most terrible things happen to them, and pinned them to the ground, naked, and while he was there, in point of fact, historians have written about Rochambeau. It was so bad at the time, when they got those troops coming, more troops, Napoleon sent down more troops, that General Rochambeau maintained for a while in Saint-Dominique a regime of whose record of bloodshed and wanton massacre historians still shudder when they think of it. What he did to the Africans that were there when Toussaint was gone and they were fighting Dessalines. But you see, he didn't know the kind of man Dessalines was. History tells us that he returned Rochambeau's savagery with double savagery. And for instance, one morning Rochambeau savagely tortured and murdered 500 African war prisoners in a frenzy of frustration after losing a battle. Dessalines countered by hanging 500 French officers right in the presence of the French army. When Rochambeau imported fierce, man-eating hound dogs to hasten the genocide of African men, women, and children, Dessalines made a vow that he would see to it that the French eat every single one of those voracious animals. He set out to do just that by besieging the city where the dogs were caged. Soon the French began to run out of food, having been penned on all sides by Dessalines' crack battalion. One by one they had to eat every single one of those dogs. That was the man that won the Haitian Revolution. That was the kind of leadership. The final humiliation came, the Rochambeau's humiliation came at the hands of Jean-Jacques Dessalines again. A man whom he hated with passion bordering on insanity. Rochambeau had complained far and wide that when he caught Dessalines, he would not hang him on a gibbet or shoot him as an officer would shoot another in battle. Rochambeau swore to his Almighty that he personally would whip Dessalines to death as a common slave. But that was not to be. It was Rochambeau who was trembling like a coward when he and his soldiers were soundly beaten by the superior military power of General Dessalines and his powerful forces. Rochambeau pleaded, begged the English Navy to take him away from Haiti as a prisoner of war and as quickly as possible, rather than leave him to face the fury of the victorious Dessalines. On November the 19th, 1803, the French were totally wiped out by Dessalines. And his warriors with Christophe and Clairvaux and Pétion, Dessalines proclaimed, "Let us swear to the whole world, to ourselves, to renounce France forever, and to die rather than live under its dominion, to fight till the last breath for the independence of our country." A few months before he made that statement, he was at Arcueil, and they wanted to get a flag for Haiti. And what they did, Dessalines took the French tricolor of red, white, and blue, and from that moment he ripped off the white, and he said, "This is the Haitian flag." And he put under it, "Independence or death." And he said, "The independence of Saint-Dominique is proclaimed. Restored to our dignity, we have asserted our rights. We swear never to yield them to any power on earth. Never again shall a colonist or a European set foot upon this territory with the title of master or proprietor. This resolution shall henceforth form the fundamental basis of our Constitution." This is the lesson of the Haitian Revolution. A lesson where Dessalines and the men with him determined that never again would a European